March 1959. The wind over the Ural Mountains never stops. It carries a constant moan, like a warning from something ancient that doesn't wish to be disturbed. On February 26, 1959, after 3 weeks of silence from the missing hikers, the first rescue team reached the upper slopes of Koletsyakal, the Mountain of the Dead. What they found was not what anyone expected. A flattened tent, half buried in the snow. The canvas was ripped open from the inside, as if those within had clawed their way out in panic. Boots, parkas, rations, diaries, everything was left behind. Only the storm had moved freely through it. The footprints were still visible, bare feet, socks, one shoe. They led down toward the tree line, fading into the white silence. The tent was cut open from inside. The belongings were orderly. There were no signs of struggle. When the first 2 bodies were discovered, half-naked, blue, pressed against each other beneath a cedar tree, the rescuers fell silent. Burn marks marred their hands, as though they tried to pull flaming branches from a fire that never quite caught. Above them, the tree's branches were broken high up, 7 meters in the air, as if someone had climbed desperately to escape something unseen. And then there were 7 still missing. The snow kept falling. The mountains waited. January 23, 1959, Sverdlovsk, Soviet Union. A group of 9 young hikers, students and recent graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, posed for a photograph before boarding their train. Their faces were bright with energy and frost, the kind of defiance that youth carries into wild places. At their head stood Igor Alexeyevich Dyatlov, 23 years old, the leader and organizer. Known among peers as meticulous, level-headed, and unshakably confident, Igor had earned the respect of the Institute's hiking club. He was the type who never allowed fear to dictate his route. "We will conquer the north. We are not afraid of the cold." With him were Zinaida, Zina, Kalmogorova, cheerful, strong-willed, known for her humor. Ludmila Dubinina, the youngest, with fiery political debates in her diary margins. Rustam Slobodin, tall, athletic, an engineer with a soldier's calm. Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonischenko, inseparable friends, one bold, the other eccentric, once survived a nuclear plant accident. Nikolai Thibeaux-Brignol, quiet, intellectual. Alexander Kolevatov, studying physics. And finally, Semyon Alexander Zolotaryov, 37 years old, a veteran much older than the rest, who joined the team at the last minute. They boarded the train that evening with guitars, skis, and laughter. One of them scribbled in the group diary, "We are 9. Spirits are high. We will bring back stories, songs, and frostbite." The plan was simple: trek across the Ural Mountains to Mount Otorten, then return by February 12. It would earn them the prestigious Grade 3 hiking certification, the highest level in Soviet sport tourism at the time. The journey began through gentle terrain, rivers frozen thick, birch forests creaking under their own weight. They traveled by train, truck, and then on foot. The temperature dropped below -20 degrees Celsius, but they moved as if it were nothing more than an inconvenience. Their diary entries from those days read like the notes of explorers, not victims. "We sing and laugh. Doroshenko made us a snow oven. Spirits are great. We met a group of Mansi hunters. They smiled, warned us not to go too far." The Mansi, indigenous reindeer herders of the region, called the mountain Koletsyakal. In their language, it meant the mountain of the dead. The hikers joked about it. They were scientists, engineers, not superstitious people. Still, one entry from Ludmila hinted at unease. "We heard strange noises last night. Zina said it was the wind, but I think it was voices. Maybe Mansi prayers." The final group photo taken on January 28 shows them standing on skis, wind tearing through their jackets, cheeks red with frost. Behind them, the Urals rise like frozen waves, ancient, silent, and indifferent. One day later, the last trace of humor appears in their log. From now on, we are alone. The snow is deep, the path uncertain. Igor says we will reach Otorten in 3 days. I believe him. The weather worsened. Snow fell thicker. The map's markings began to blur. January 30, 1959. The team began to climb the higher slopes toward Kolat. The storm increased, visibility dropping to mere meters. They built a temporary cache of food and equipment in the forest, planning to return after the summit. That night, as they set camp, Yuri Krivonischenko wrote in the group diary. We found tracks near the tree line. Large, round, too far apart for man or animal. We joked about Yetis. Zolotaryov said nothing. They laughed then, that kind of forced laughter meant to quiet fear. The next morning, Yuri Yudin, the 10th member of the group, fell ill with severe joint pain. He turned back to civilization. The others promised to write once they returned. He was the last person to see them alive. The remaining 9 continued upward. The trail grew indistinct. Their compass needles began to drift, twitching erratically. One photo from that day shows Igor leaning over a map, frowning, his glove pulled off, skin already whitening with frostbite. At night, the storm came down in earnest. They pitched the tent, pressed together in silence. The wind howled against the canvas like a living thing. In Ludmila's diary, a single entry was found for that night. The wind has a voice tonight. February 1, 1959. The Dyatlov group should have turned back. The path to Mount Otorten veered northwest, but the storm pushed them west instead, directly toward Kolat. Igor realized the error but decided to camp there for the night rather than lose altitude. He told his group. We will make a note of our location and continue tomorrow. We have enough supplies. They set up the tent on the open slope, an odd choice, exposed to the wind, far from the shelter of the forest. It's one of the details investigators never fully understood. That evening, they ate, wrote final notes, and took a few last photographs. In one, Zina smiles directly at the camera, snow clinging to her eyelashes. In another, Igor is half turned away, his face obscured by blowing snow. The mood is cheerful, reads the final journal entry. The storm is strong, but we are stronger. By 9 p.m., the wind reached hurricane levels. The temperature plunged to -30°C. The mountain moaned with the sound of ice shifting. Somewhere between 10 o'clock and midnight, the tent was slashed open from within. No one knows the exact time when it began. At some point between 10 p.m. and midnight, the calm discipline recorded in Igor Dyatlov's log gave way to chaos. The tent, found weeks later, told its story in mute geometry. Cuts made from the inside out. Sleeping bags left unzipped. Boots lined up but untouched. Investigators measured 8 long slashes through the canvas. Snow had drifted in, covering a neat row of tools and notebooks. The stove was unlit, the group had not yet gone to sleep. March 1959. Cuts in fabric performed from inside. Exit of 9 persons inferred. Lighting equipment left functional. Outside, the temperature was estimated at -28°C. The wind reached hurricane strength. Yet 9 people, experienced mountaineers, had left their shelter half-dressed. Some wore socks, one a single felt boot. Footprints showed they moved deliberately at first, then staggered. They led downhill in a widening fan pattern. After 500 meters the trail divided, 3 sets veered toward the forest, others toward the ravine. Something had driven them out, but what it was left no trace in the snow. The first two bodies were found at the edge of the forest, beneath a great cedar. They lay side by side, barefoot, dressed only in underwear. The branches above them were snapped up to 7 meters high, suggesting someone had climbed in panic or to scout the camp. Beneath the tree, a faint ring of ashes, the remains of a small fire built from damp cedar bark. Autopsy extract, March 4, 1959. Epidermal burns on fingers and shins consistent with proximity to open flame. No defensive wounds. Cause of death, hypothermia. Nearby were fragments of flesh embedded in the bark, and a length of cloth torn from a jacket, perhaps used as kindling. Searchers noted the eerie neatness of the scene, no animal tracks, no signs of struggle, only the still forms of Krivonischenko and Doroshenko, the fire between them long extinguished. The forest absorbed the noise of the wind, the snow fell in a muffled rhythm. When rescuers called out the hikers' names, the mountain gave no echo. A line of footprints and faint impressions in the snow led back toward the slope. 3 bodies were found along it, spaced like the punctuation of a single, desperate sentence. Igor Dyatlov lay face up, fists full of snow. Rustam Slobodin, one boot on, one off, bore a thin fracture in his skull but no external bleeding. Zina Kolmogorova was farther uphill, arms frozen in a reaching gesture, as if crawling back toward the tent. Each had died of exposure. Their clothing showed that they had exchanged garments, trading coats and boots in confusion or compassion. Rescue log, February 28, 1959. Positions indicate attempted return to tent. No evidence of external violence. Distance between bodies approximate 150 m each. When these 5 were counted, 4 still remained missing. The mountain kept them hidden for 2 months. May 5, 1959, the thaw exposed a hollow in a ravine 200 meters from the cedar. Within it lay the last 4. They had attempted a shelter, a crude den cut into the snow, lined with branches and clothing. The bodies were Dubinina, Kolevatov, Thibault-Brignol, and Zolotaryov. 2 wore fragments of the earlier victims' clothes. One had a fur coat and a camera around his neck, the lens cracked. The injuries puzzled investigators. Dubinina's ribs were broken inward, her tongue and part of her lips were missing. Thibault-Brignol's skull was shattered by a force likened to a car collision. Yet no external wounds matched the internal trauma. Medical conclusion. Damage incompatible with falls from standing height. Compression from great pressure, origin unknown. Water from melting snow had preserved their faces in masks of ice. When the bodies were lifted out, a faint orange tint stained the snow beneath, a discoloration later described as radioactive dust, though the official tests remained inconclusive. One camera's last frame showed blurred streaks of light across the sky. The official inquiry lasted barely 3 months. Its language was precise, drained of emotion, yet behind every sentence lingered confusion. No avalanche traces were found. No evidence of attack, human or animal. Radiation readings above normal on 2 garments. The tent, cut open from inside. All cameras stopped on the night of February 1st. The final verdict, issued May 1959, read: the deaths of the group members were the result of a compelling unknown force. Afterward the file was sealed. The mountain received a name from the world's press, Dyatlov Pass. For years, local rumors mixed with military secrecy. Some spoke of rocket tests, others of strange orbs seen in the northern sky. The Monsi said the mountain spirits had been angered. Yuri Yudin, the lone member who had turned back, lived quietly for decades. When asked what he believed happened, he answered only: something made them leave the tent. Something they could not see. Over the years, the photographs and diaries were catalogued, copied, debated. Each detail invited a theory. Wind-induced panic, infrasonic waves, avalanche, military experiment, alien encounter. None fit perfectly. One frame, sometimes called frame 33, remained central. It shows a bright shape rising above the ridge, overexposed, surrounded by haze. The faces of the hikers in the preceding images are turned toward it. Excerpt, Forensic Reanalysis, 1970s. Photochemical anomalies suggest light source within atmosphere, not cosmic. Intensity uncertain. But the journals told a quieter story. In their handwriting the fear is gradual, not sudden. A tone of weariness, isolation, and a sense that the mountain itself was listening. When experts overlaid their last footprints onto a contour map, they noticed a pattern, a broad arc as if the group had spread out to face something descending from above, or from the wind itself. Today the Dyatlov Pass is still. Only a weathered memorial stone stands at the base of the slope, engraved with 9 names. Travelers leave candles and photographs that freeze upright in the wind. The documents remain sparse, the photographs grainy, yet every year new expeditions return to measure, to theorize, to stand where the tent once stood. None stay through the night. In the recovered camera's final exposure, the snow appears luminous, almost metallic. The figures are blurred, 9 shapes turning toward a brightness just beyond the frame. When the wind rises, the pass hums. It sounds like breath. The mountain is unchanged. The snow covers the traces, then reveals them again. And in the intervals between gusts, when everything pauses, there is a silence so complete it seems alive. The same silence that swallowed 9 voices in February 1959. In May 1959 the official inquiry ended with 12 pages of conclusion and 1 line that echoed for decades. The deaths were the result of a compelling unknown force. Then the folders were stamped secret. For 20 years they lay in an archive in Sverdlovsk. Occasionally a clerk would open them, check the inventory, then close them again. The paper smelled of damp cellars and typewriter ink. Inside were 347 photographs, 35 pages of diary text, 9 autopsy forms, 1 broken camera, 1 tent canvas sealed in brown paper. The Soviet press made no mention of it. Families were told not to speak publicly. When a journalist asked a local prosecutor about the mountain tragedy, he replied, "An accident in bad weather. Nothing more." Yet among students the story circulated quietly, passed like a campfire tale. They spoke of orange lights, of military rockets, of the forbidden pass where compasses spun and voices carried on the wind. With glasnost, the state archives began to loosen. In 1989 a journalist named Yuri Kuntsevich obtained partial access to the Dyatlov file. He copied photographs, interviewed surviving searchers, and organized a small memorial expedition. The hikers returned to the pass that winter. The snow lay deep, the air utterly still. They pitched a tent on roughly the same slope. At night one of them recorded in his notebook, "Nothing moves. Yet the wind sounds like breathing through cloth." The memorial stone was set that year, 9 names engraved in Cyrillic, a star above them. Locals began calling the area Dyatlov Pass, a name the government reluctantly accepted. Scientists revisited the evidence. Avalanches were simulated and ruled unlikely. Animal attacks impossible. Radioactive contamination unexplained but mild. A physicist proposed katabatic wind, a rare downslope gust that can roar suddenly, produce infrasound, and trigger panic. The theory fit part of the puzzle but not the injuries. Every explanation solved one mystery and created another. Yuri Yudin, the 10th hiker who had turned back on January 28, 1959, lived a quiet life in a small apartment in the Ural town of Asbest. In later interviews he sat beside his worn backpack and spoke softly, eyes lowered. "I remember their laughter. I still see it when I close my eyes. I wish I had gone with them, or none had gone at all." Reporters pressed him for theories. He always answered the same. Something frightened them. It was not avalanche, not people. Something they could not understand. He died in 2013. On his bookshelf, investigators found a framed photograph of the group beside a line he had underlined in pen. "We will bring back stories." 60 years after the event, the Russian Prosecutor General's office reopened the case. Teams returned with GPS, drones, and modern meteorology models. After a year of study, the conclusion was announced. An unusual avalanche triggered by rare snow conditions caused the hikers to flee. Injuries resulted from snow load and hypothermia. For many, it was a tidy ending. For others, too tidy. Geologists argued that the slope angle was too shallow. Avalanche experts said the pattern of broken ribs still made little sense. Yet the official file was closed once more. On paper, the mountain had finally yielded its cause. In spirit, it remained silent. Every winter new visitors come. Some bring flowers, some instruments, some only curiosity. The wind there behaves strangely, one moment absent, the next a deep resonant hum that vibrates through coat fabric and camera housing. A few claim to have heard voices, a fragment of laughter, a cry quickly swallowed by distance. Audio recorders capture only static. Field log, Expedition 2024. At 3:12 the wind stopped. For 30 seconds complete silence. Then a low tone, like breath through metal. Locals still call Kholat Syakhl by its Mansi name, the Mountain of the Dead. They say it is not cursed, only listening. More than 6 decades later the photographs remain, smiles frozen on film, boots half-laced, snowflakes caught in mid-fall. Forensic language cannot erase them. Every theory, scientific or supernatural, ends in the same image. A tent on a slope. A cut from inside. Footprints leading into night. Final note from the reopened 2020 case. No criminal act. No known force. Human behavior under extreme conditions. But the mountain does not offer explanations. It offers only its silence. When the wind returns, it moves through the cedar branches with a sound like memory. Some nights, under the aurora, faint lights still appear over the ridge. Cameras catch them as blurs, as they always did. Perhaps reflections, perhaps nothing at all. And so the file ends again. The same snow. The same unanswered quiet. The white silence over Dyatlov Pass. After the official closure in 1959, the Dyatlov materials were stored in the Sverdlovsk Regional Archive. In the 1990s, following the dissolution of the Soviet Union, portions were declassified. Students and amateur researchers began scanning negatives, translating diaries, and posting them online. Today, almost every photograph taken by the hikers has been digitized, blurred faces, frozen smiles, snow-covered ridges, and the final frames of February 1st. The original tent canvas, still folded in wax paper, rests in a controlled storage room in Ekaterinburg. The search logs and autopsy reports, yellowed, fragile, are preserved under low light. Condition, stable. Paper acidity moderate. Retained for permanent storage. These documents form one of the most complete and haunting case files of the Soviet era. For the families of the 9 hikers, the loss never receded into myth, it remained domestic, daily. Letters, medals, and photographs stayed on sideboards for decades. Parents died without receiving clear answers. In the 2000s, several relatives, among them Tatiana Permanova, sister of Ludmila Dubinina, gave interviews. They were good children, bright, ambitious. The state said an accident, but an accident does not take 9. Each year, on the anniversary, descendants gather near Ural Polytechnic University, now UPI. Candles are lit on the steps, names are read in order. Students who never knew them recite their hiking motto. If not us, then who? It has become less a mystery than a memorial. The Dyatlov group represents the courage, curiosity, and fragility of human ambition against indifferent nature. Since 2000, more than a dozen scientific and independent expeditions have returned to Dyatlov Pass. They have used ground-penetrating radar, atmospheric sensors, and avalanche modeling software. A Swiss research team in 2021 reconstructed the tent collapse using computer simulations. Their findings supported a delayed slab avalanche, a rare phenomenon in which compacted snow shifts hours after cutting. Their conclusion matched the 2020 Russian report. An unusual avalanche mechanism, combined with hypothermia and darkness, explains the incident without external factors. It did not explain everything, the internal injuries, the exact timing, but it restored a sense of physical cause and human scale. For many scientists, it marked the end of the search for supernatural answers, leaving only the human tragedy of 9 lives caught in a rare confluence of natural forces. Dyatlov Pass lies within the northern Ural Mountains, 61 degrees 45 minutes north, 59 degrees 27 minutes east. The area remains remote, accessible only by multi-day hike or snowmobile in winter. In summer, wildflowers bloom along the Lozva River. In winter, the wind scours the snow into rippling waves of ice. A metal memorial plaque stands where the group's tent was believed to have stood. Nearby, a cairn of stones bears a bronze plate engraved with their names and the date, February 1959. Every year hikers place new flags and small tokens, buttons, patches, even photographs. Some leave notes sealed in jars, words of respect, not curiosity. The site is not a legend. It is a grave. The mountain has long since reclaimed its silence. Only the tent's footprint, faint in satellite imagery, marks where they spent their final night. The Dyatlov Pass incident occupies a strange space in modern history, part scientific puzzle, part cultural symbol. It has inspired over 100 books, multiple documentaries, and several films. The Dyatlov Foundation, established in Ekaterinburg, maintains an online archive and funds memorial upkeep. Universities in Russia and abroad use the case to teach investigation methodology, human behavior under stress, and forensic reconstruction. For those who study it, the lesson is not fear, but humility. That human precision and optimism can still be undone by nature's smallest miscalculation. Inscription on the Dyatlov Memorial Museum, Ekaterinburg. Dedicated to the memory of 9 hikers who sought knowledge and met the unknown. Today, the Dyatlov Pass file is considered complete. Theories still circulate, some romantic, some implausible, but within the Russian archives, the event is categorized under natural disaster, 1959. What remains is a body of data, measurements, testimonies, film reels, and, behind it, 9 young lives cut short by snow, wind, and cold. When asked why it continues to fascinate, a historian from Ekaterinburg replied, "Because there is no villain. Only the limits of human endurance." The Dyatlov case endures not as mystery, but as memory. A caution carved in ice about the thin line between exploration and surrender.